Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Planet Zoo 2 video where we're going to be doing some aquarium species speculation. So aquariums is a system that I'll go into more detail in a little bit later on in another video, but there are loads of different aquarium species that can be considered for Planet Zoo 2, many that are more common than others, and some that I feel would just fill niches that I think would need to be filled in a marine environment. So let's get into it. So our first animal is the sand tiger shark, also known as the grey-nosed shark here in Australia. It's a critically endangered species, but is one of the most common sharks displayed in captivity due to their fairly docile nature. They're quite easygoing, but also a decent sized shark, and so would make a great addition to any aquarium. Zebra sharks are also quite popular in captivity with their charismatic nature and also quite friendly appearance. Now, zebra sharks are largely named after the juvenile's appearance, where they have stripes, but then grow up into adults that have spots, and so in some parts of the world they can be called leopard sharks. But they are also endangered, and many aquariums do help in their conservation. The sandbar shark is another very common species displayed in captivity, particularly in the US that I've seen, being almost in every aquarium that you come across over there. But they're sort of that classic shark shape that you expect, like the pointed snout, the small eyes, the pectoral fins, the tall dorsal fin, and the sickle-shaped tail fin. Like, that is sort of the basic body shape of a shark that most people recognize, and so it'd be good to just have a general looking shark in the game, and I think the sandbar fits that category perfectly. Going on to a more famous and notorious shark, we have the great hammerhead, one of the largest predatory sharks in the world, but also a relatively harmless one compared to some other sharks. They, like I said, they are quite large, getting up to about 6 meters long, with a very tall dorsal fin, and of course that distinct hammer head, which is filled with electroreceptors that it uses to scan along the seafloor to detect prey. But their iconic appearance is certainly one reason why they are fairly popular in aquaria, and why I would love to see them in Planet Zoo 2. Moving on to the shark's relatives, the rays, we have the cow-nosed ray, which, like the sandbar shark, is one of the most common rays in captivity. So they are almost in every aquarium that you come across in the US due to their fairly docile nature, but also just their fairly safe biology, as just a ray. They don't actually have a barb on their tail, and so are fairly safe to handle because you won't get stung, basically. But they do live in large shoals, and so you can keep a large number of them together and can create a rather nice oceanarium. Pretty much as popular as the cow-nosed ray is the southern stingray. So this is the stingray species that most people from the Americas would be familiar with, as they are found through the ocean at the bottom of the southern United States, through the Caribbean and up to the top of South America. Like, they're fairly widespread, and so would be a really great species to see, as you can incorporate them into a variety of Caribbean but also other types of habitats. Going for one of the largest rays here, we have the Reef manta ray, which is featured relatively prominently in mainstream aquariums, like the Georgia Aquarium has them, and I think a few in Asia also represent this species. I was initially going to go for the lesser devil ray, or a mobula ray, as both are much smaller and somewhat more economically efficient than sustaining the manta ray, but they are a very iconic animal and really beautiful. And if you were to create a large oceanarium, manta rays would just be perfect for that. Their large shape, just gliding over like an underwater tunnel, that would just be perfect. Then for a more obscure member of the cartilaginous fish, we have a sawfish. So this is the longcomb or green sawfish, and is one of the ones that is probably most common in captivity. So you'll see them in multiple aquariums that actually house sawfish. So most aquariums that label a sawfish will likely be this one. They're critically endangered. All sawfish are endangered. Like, they are very hard to find in the wild, but they are under in a lot of trouble out there. But they are also a very peculiar looking fish. They add a great deal of diversity to a roster, and so would make a perfect addition alongside the sharks and rays. Moving on to more general reef fish, we have the endangered humphead wrasse, a very recognizable fish from the Indo-Pacific and Pacific Ocean. One that I haven't had the privilege of seeing in the wild, but they are a massive fish, and certainly are one of the largest mammals on the reef, and would be a great way of incorporating larger fish into a reef ecosystem, especially in an oceanarium exhibit where large fish are generally kept, and I think would just really add to the layers that a reef has in terms of the species that are found there. Then we have the green sea turtle, the sea turtle that is housed in captivity the most often. Now, all sea turtles are raised in captivity. Very few parks have actually successfully bred them, and so you get a whole range of different turtles. So some facilities have hawksbills, some have loggerheads, but I've certainly seen more examples of green sea turtles in captivity, more so than the others. And yeah, it is just one of the most iconic turtles, and so would make the most sense. They're also not very large, so can work with relatively small sizes of exhibit. The giant grouper is found across the Indo-Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and all the way up into the Red Sea, and are the equivalent of the Goliath grouper from the Atlantic over here. And so they're fairly common in captivity as well. And yeah, they fill a similar role to the humphead wrasse, but being a bit more predatory than the humphead wrasse, and can also get a bit bigger as well. And so they're pretty good for housing alongside maybe the sharks and the rays, as well. They're not really going to mess with each other, and giant groupers create a sound from their swim bladder that echoes through the water that often deters sharks. Then we have the longfin or taira batfish. So these guys are housed in many oceanarium exhibits as well, being more so the fish that you see hanging out on the top of the reef, but also just a little bit over the drop-off. But they are known for one thing in particular, in that they follow turtles around. And why do they follow the turtles around? Well, because they feed on turtle poo. So the nutrients in the turtle's dung is food for the batfish. And so you could really create a really nice relationship there in the exhibit, where you have all these different fish filling different roles in the ecosystem. So when the turtles excrete, the batfish come in and clean it up instead of the scuba diver keepers the aquarists having to clean it up instead. Another prominent oceanarium fish is the trevally. So I looked at several different trevally species, and I think the golden trevally is the best choice here, not just because of its distinct coloration, but also it lives in fairly decent sized shoals, and so you could create a really nice oceanarium with just a large shoal of trevally alongside all the other fish that you'd have in there. The mandarin fish, or mandarin goby, is a fish that would generally be on the bottom of the reef tank. So you're creating a coral reef. The reef has several different layers of fish. You have fish on the sea floor, you have fish in the corals, fish in the water, and fish in all the nooks and crannies doing several different roles. Fish in the anemones even, we'll get to that a little bit later. But the mandarin fish is certainly the most distinct of the gobies, with those bright iridescent colours. They're very beautiful, very common in captivity, and yeah, it would just add to the niche roles that several fish play. The Bangai cardinalfish is another fish that's fairly common in aquaria, being found in decent sized shoals, and filling a similar role to somewhat damselfish and soldierfish, being sort of just that little fish that you see around that is just in large shoals, and the Bangai cardinalfish generally is. They're also very common in captivity, so I'd be surprised if these were overlooked. The yellow tang, or bubbles, is also a very popular reef fish due to its just completely yellow coloration. But yeah, they hang around on the reef, generally on their own, I think. I don't know much about this species, but they're certainly a distinct species, and so it would make plenty of sense as a member of the tang family to be included. The raccoon butterfly fish is also just a classic looking reef fish. So when I was a little kid, I was given a puzzle that was of a coral reef, and the raccoon butterfly fish was on there, and it just has such a distinct look with those black eye patches, the white behind that, and then the bright yellow coloration. It was just a very memorable looking fish. And so many reef fish, if I was any butterfly fish could work, honestly. I've got another one coming up a little bit later, but they are just so colourful and add so much to the colours of a reef. The clown triggerfish is another species of fish that is fairly well known, with those bright white spots on the underbelly, the yellow and black speckling on the top, and the bright yellow beak. Like, they're very distinct. And just that fish that you see swimming around alongside all the others. Like, you're looking at the reef and you're noticing all these different fish. You see multiple in shoals, but then you just see this one coming across, and that's generally something like a triggerfish that generally just hangs out. Now, this is the one that I feel is the most interesting. Now, they're very small, no bigger than my index finger, but the blue streak cleaner wrasse is one of the most important fish on a coral reef, for one reason in particular, is because they are a cleaner. So they set up cleaning stations where several wrasse hang out. It's often run by a mating pair that then cleans in the teeth of sharks, in the mouths of rays, in groupers as well. So having a cleaning station enrichment item that you need, like cleaner wrasse, to be a part of, that would be a really cool feature, and many of the animals would benefit from it. So every large predatory fish could come through and the cleaner wrasse just clean. And like, if we were to add other animals like cleaner shrimp, those would be really good to see as well, just to add to how so many species have an effect on so many others on a reef. The Achilles tang is a fairly distinct species as well, with that bright orange spot towards the tail. There's not too much to say. Like, I'm just covering all the different groups of reef fish, just so that there's a good variety, because they all do have different roles, but many of them can sort of blend the same in a way. But yeah, they're very cool looking fish, and so would be a really good bit of diversity, particularly for Indo-Pacific aquariums. The Moorish idol, or gill, is another fairly distinct fish from the Indo-Pacific, well known for that long thread-like dorsal fin, and also their black and white and yellow coloration. They're very distinct. You generally see these guys swimming around the reef in shoals with that dorsal fin trailing behind them as they swim. But yeah, very distinct, very colourful. The copper band butterfly fish is in a similar league, also one of the most popular fish in the aquarium trade, due to that very distinct coloration of the silver scales, then broken up with these bright copper bars. And then towards the tail you get much more golden colours. Big nose unicorn fish would be another really decent sized fish just to have along a reef tank. And yeah, I've seen unicorn fish before. Some do have a more prominent nose, so the long nose, I think it is, yeah, the long nose unicorn fish it lives up to the name a bit more with a horn. But these guys, I think, just are much more colourful with those iridescent blue stripes going down the body. Fox-faced rabbitfish are one of the more important fish that you have in a reef tank, and one of those reasons is that they feed on algae. So they would be going around feeding on the algae, making sure it's not clogging up the tank really, and just keeping the whole area clean. Like, they get a benefit from it, everything else gets a benefit from it, so they certainly fill a pretty important role in any reef tank. The emperor angelfish is another very distinct fish, with the male in particular being one of the most recognizable of all reef fish, with that white mouth, the bright electric blue stripes, and the yellow breaking it up. They're very distinct, and also a fairly decent size reef fish. So, like many of the others I've mentioned, they will feed on algae as well. So all these reef fish working together to clean algae out of the reef, and also feed on plankton and all sorts of other things, just keeping the ecosystem in check. And onto possibly the second most recognizable reef fish on the planet, we have the regal blue tang, or pallet surgeonfish, or dory to most people. So these guys also feed on algae, much like the other tangs that I've mentioned in the video, but of course they have that distinct electric blue coloration broken up with that black stripe, and also the bright yellow tail. Like, they're very iconic, very popular, and yeah, it would be a massive oversight if this species wasn't in an aquarium, in the aquarium roster. Now, for the most recognizable fish on the planet, the Ocellaris clownfish. So these guys are, of course, Nemo and Marlin, and coral. Yeah, so they're most clownfish and anemone fish as a whole are well known for living in an anemone, which is another animal. Now, anemones do have venom in their tentacles, but all anemone fish are immune to the venom of the specific anemone that they live in. So, Ocellaris clownfish live in a particular species. The name escapes me right now, but that would be an important part of their enrichment, so you would need to have that anemone part of the exhibit. Otherwise, the Ocellaris clownfish would not be able to survive. But of course, they're well known for their coloration, with the overall orange body broken up by these white stripes. One of my favorite creatures on the reef is the moray eel, and the most recognizable is the green moray. So this species is found across the Pacific Ocean and in many other oceans as well, just with different types of green moray. But they're very prominent predators, and it would just be really cool to have an aquarium where you just see this eel poking out of a hole. And like, that would be another important enrichment item for this, is that you have like a sort of coral maze or something, or just a large coral structure that the eel hangs out in and just occasionally pokes its head out and goes to feed every now and then. Like, that would be cool. Like, aquariums have so much cool stuff going on with the different species that they maintain, that I think the how the aquariums will work video is going to be a long one. And the last of the saltwater fish is the guinea fowl puffer. At least I think it's the last saltwater fish. Might not be. The guinea fowl puffer, I was looking at all the different puffer fish, the long spine puffer fish being the most iconic, and could easily be interchanged for this, but I felt like the guinea fowl puffer was just a little bit more distinct and a little bit more creative in how it looks. Like, they are black with polka dots, but also can have a fairly deep blue color, broken up by all these little white polka dots. But they're one of my favorites, and yeah, I thought I'd just include it here. Our only marine mammal in the video is the West Indian manatee. So this is a species that has been heavily requested by the community, as they are fairly prominent in North American zoos and many other parks around the world. We don't have any here in Australia. We have a dugong, but yeah, no manatees. But yeah, they're very cool animals. Also nicknamed sea cows. They move fairly slowly, feed on seagrass, and are just an overall good time, really. Like, they're very friendly. You're not really going to be in an aggressive situation with a manatee unless you mess with its calf. But yeah, they're very cool, very popular, and as I said, are our only marine mammal in the video, as I thought cetaceans, yeah, that whole subject is not something I think Planet Zoo should deal with. Now we move on to our riverine species. So we have the arapaima, one of the largest freshwater fish on the planet, and one of the only fish known to breathe air. So that is something that you'll have to consider when designing your aquariums, is that there should be plenty of surface area for this guy to breathe from the surface. But they're very cool. They have very armored scales, like they're very solid, very difficult for many animals to hunt. Even giant river otters struggle to hunt these guys. But they're very prehistoric looking. They're just a very iconic fish from the Amazon. Now, many of these freshwater fish are from the Amazon, like the red-tailed catfish, one of the most popular catfish in the aquarium trade, known for their black coloration with the white underbelly and the red tail. Then we have the tambaki or pacu. So they're a fairly decent sized fish, closely related to piranhas, but unlike piranhas, are herbivores, so they feed on fruits and plant matter, and are also known for their human-like teeth, which go fairly deep into the mouth, as many are rounded at the top to act as crushing mechanisms to break down all the food that they ingest. Then we have the ocellate river stingray, or peacock eye stingray, or motoro ray. They're known by many names, but are also more feared than piranhas in much of South America. And the many Amazon exhibits do incorporate a freshwater stingray, and if I was going to pick one, it was going to be the ocellate, just because of those really distinct orange spots. And possibly South America's most iconic fish, the red-bellied piranha, a species that is generally kept on its own for very obvious reasons, but yeah, they're very common in aquaria, most often displayed in Amazon exhibits, of course. But yeah, if you're going to include Amazon species in your zoo and you wanted to have an aquarium as part of that, you'd have the main tank with like the arapimas, the pacus and the catfish and the stingrays, but then you'd have a smaller tank dedicated to the piranhas. A few other small fish include the blue discus, which is another very popular aquarium fish, and the Oscar, which is another quite popular one, and honestly one that I really love the coloration of, with those beautiful orange spots that almost make up stripes going across their fairly dark bodies. Moving on to Asia, we have the koi, which is a descendant of what is often considered the Amur carp. So these guys are very popular, found all over the world in all sorts of different settings, whether it be decorative ponds, Japanese gardens, but also housed in zoos in, well, very similar settings. But yeah, they're very popular, very common in captivity, and yeah, is a species that I know a lot of people would benefit from being added in. One species I really like is the Asian arowana. So these guys are very similar in appearance to arapima, but are also much smaller. But these guys are very colourful as well, so they come in a whole range of different colours, and are also quite popular in the aquarium trade, and that's where you get several different variations of this fish. But if you were going to have an Asian river system exhibit, the arowana would certainly have to be a part of it, because they are just beautiful fish. And our last animal of the video is the banded archerfish. So these are some of my favourite fish, simply because they do live up to that name. So the way archerfish work is they swallow a bit of water, they angle themselves at a specific angle to hit prey on leaves or a branch above the water, so they actually have really good depth perception, and so they angle themselves perfectly and then shoot a jet of water to knock that prey off. And it actually takes quite a few years for these fish to master that technique, but it would be really cool to have like an enrichment item over their tank where you have like a bucket of insects or something like that, and they have to shoot jets of water at it to knock the food down. Like, that would be really cool to utilize their unique adaptation. But I only wanted to limit it to 40 species in this video because, of course, there are so many other species that could be considered. Aquariums are literally a new frontier for Planet Zoo 2, where there are just so many possibilities for animals that can be included, but also DLCs down the line, being able to make a DLC following several different themes like river monsters or Indo-Pacific, in Caribbean, the the Sea of Cortez, all sorts of different environments can warrant different DLCs to add in so many aquarium species. And let me know what species from the aquarium sector would you like to see in Planet Zoo 2? What are your main wish list species for aquarium species in Planet Zoo 2? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.